My check to the 212.
It's Tar on the mic, and I do what I do, but I'ma pass it to my husband and friend, like that's John and Luda. He gonna do it again.
Tell me
Come on, man.
again.
Mm.
Tell me again.
Dun, 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 dun.
I've been knowing you for a long time. Shawty. But fucking never crossed my mind.
Shorty.
And we back. Episode number 4.
So we had someone had asked us a question, and we had filmed that video, y'all. And it was a great video. When I was going back to start to edit, after the 8-minute mark, everything else was like gone, like as far as the sound. Basically, the mics ended up dying. But that's like the reality side. But on the spiritual side, it was so funny because I had prayed the night before and I was like, Lord, like continue to allow us to grow so that we can, help our community in the ways that they need guidance or inspiration or whatever the case may be. Y'all be careful what you pray for, bro. Be careful because out of my mouth, I kid you not, it was yesterday. The next day, which was yesterday, we had a moment of growth. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Real, raw, honest, and obviously this is probably something that somebody gonna need to hear. So let's get into it. This is Let's Get Real About Marriage.
I did it.
You did.
I did it. So basically, we had just came from the gym and we came home and we were relaxing a little bit and we were gonna go to Whole Foods after that, do a little Whole Foods date because Whole Foods is a really big store for my wife. She loves that damn store. And that was one of the places she took me when we first started dating. Whenever I would go out to Irvine, right? So we get everything ready, we get the boys ready, and we're skedaddling to the car. Get in the car, we're driving down. As we were driving to Whole Foods, there was a car that like pumped the brakes really hard, and so like I hit my brakes. She like reaches to the front, and is like baby, and I'm like baby. And for me, passenger seat driving, or what I consider passenger seat driving, is a really big pet peeve for me. But she has been in several accidents where she's been hit from behind and because of scenarios like that. So that's more where she was stemming from. But those two things was colliding and we got into it.
So we pull into Whole Foods and I'm feeling away because like why are you upset when I didn't do like anything in my mind to affect you? Um so at this point I'm sitting in the car and I'm like I didn't want to go into Whole Foods. Because for me the energy is off and this place for me is sacred. We have beautiful memories here. I'm not trying to bring in no type of bad energy. Like the boys have never been here. We're about to open up one of our traditions to our kids. I'm not about to walk in here and act like I'm having a good time when I know like I'm not in the mood for this right now. Like I'm feeling the type of way. So Trey's like, he's sitting there and basically, he was like, well, you can go in, with Titus because Theo was asleep and I'll stay here. And I'm like, well, no, because that's not the reason we came here. We came here to come in as a family. Um, and I said, but honestly, like I don't want to go in. Um, so we'll stop the story there, and we can kind of go into the conversation that we had to have. Um, that kind of opened us up to seeing from the opposite point of view.
What really started everything of us having the conversation was our oldest son, Titus. He was like trying to check on Guntar after he'll try to go check on us. And I was like, son, I want you to know, like, growing up, things like this are going to happen, but it is not your job to check up on your mama. It's mine. So I want you to continue to be a child, do what you do, play with your toys, and I will go check on your mother. But I'm going to do it at the time that I feel like, because she did voice that she needed some space. So I go check on her. And so we start talking about it. And we kind of get into the discussion of, why each other felt the way that we felt. My side of it, it was, for me, it was just my pet peeve. I had never like seriously voiced that to her, and so that communication is what was missing out of my end. That communication would have been very vital in that, because she's still trying to heal and process that. And as being a passenger, not having control and uh, having flashbacks or whatever the case of being hit, that could have been avoided if she knew like that I was serious about like if I was because I always said something about it, but I was never like like no I'm dead ass like I was just like hee ha like stop doing that. So I think if I was like foot down like nah like this really aggravates me, then
Well, no, let's actually be real about it because he put his foot down because I would like if I felt like he wasn't going to stop or if I felt like he was swerving or like over the line or something, I would grab the wheel. There'd be
mm,
times where I thought he'd be sleeping, like driving, and I'd move the wheel, and he would get upset about that. So he very clearly told me that he didn't like that, and so I stopped doing that, and instead I would put my hand on the dashboard if I felt like he wasn't going to stop, in due time, or if he didn't see that the car stops. That's where I made my change. So then, as we're in this moment, I'm like, one, I made an adjustment for myself as far as like, okay, I feel like this was middle ground. Like, I used to go to the extreme in my trauma and allowed my trauma to delegate how I reacted in certain situations out of fear. But because I would do that, it would cross over into his boundary. Um, so instead, I made the change to like, okay, let me just stay in my area, my bubble. Um, so as we're talking through it, I'm like, well, dang, like at this point, if it's if I feel like I already made a contribution to meet you halfway, at this point there's no more halfway. I'm just gonna retract and I will just fight myself and how I react in those situations. And he was like, no. And at this point I was like, oh, you gonna be mad about it? But I'm pretty set on that. um but he fought that pretty hard.
yeah, because I'm like, and that was the thing for me. Like once I got once it clicked for me about the whole traumatic thing, I was like, no, like I will check myself in it because you're still trying to heal from that. There's no reason for you to try to speed up your healing or whatever because I get mad about something. Like that don't make no sense. That'd be like if someone was done to me traumatically and it was like dealt with her for some reason. She was trying to make me like, oh well, you need to hurry up and deal with this.
Which actually, let's pause there because I feel like that happens a lot in marriage. So take our example, which is pretty minuscule,
Yeah.
and put so many different scenarios. And you can probably put your own scenario of something where, like you went through a traumatic situation and one, either there was no communication to your partner on either end. Maybe they didn't know to the certain extent of how traumatic this event was. Like maybe it was you just had a surface level conversation and
Mm.
they didn't know how traumatic this was. So then they did something that triggered you, and then you either blow up, however you deal with your trauma,
Yeah.
and then they react to that. That's I feel like that's where a lot of relationships and marriages come into a lot of problems. And then that partner who's going through that said trauma then retracts
Mm-hmm.
and never wants to open up about things, or they just as far as a certain situation, they just feel like, well, I can't come to you or I can't because when I do have an episode,
You pop off.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, it's gonna be trial and error. Let's be
Mm.
real. Like this was our trial and error, so we're coming to you with our trial and error. Um, so one, you can either utilize some of the things that we did um, to avoid some of the things, um, or just to take note because obviously
Yeah.
it's a thing that happens.
Because like even with that, it all comes back down to communication on both ends. Like she had voiced about the traumatic experience before, and you know I should have took that you know even more serious than I had been before. And me voicing about the whole passenger seat driving thing, like all that communication could have, you know, put this in such a minimal light, and it would have never got as big as it was. And that's the same thing for everything. Like, no matter how little, this is actually something I really learned yesterday. Like, because I'm one to, if I deem it not really like a big deal, I'm not gonna say anything on it. But now you need to, because it might, even if it's not a big deal for you, it might be a big deal for them, and you can't filter that for them. You know, they have to do that on their own. Like, so you have to say everything, and that goes with even like simple conversations you had at work, or you know, something that happened in your past that you know you're like, it's not really that big of a deal, but they're like, no, like, because that could be a reason why you do this, or that could be a reason why you do that, and you don't realize it because you're like, it's not that big of a deal. So I will say the I guess a good way to put it is like, with your kid, every little thing they do, you're like, oh, that's such a big deal. Oh, like,
let me capture that. Let
yeah.
me cheer that on.
Same thing with your communication. Every little thing, say something about it. You know, hey, I had a conversation with this dude today about this, and I just thought it was funny. And even if it's, your partner might like be like, oh, okay, but it's still like you're not withholding anything.
And I feel like that just also builds your friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, being receptive to, let's just take a normal friendship. Y'all be kikiing with your friends all the time, saying the dumbest stuff. And I'm one of them. I be sending stupid stuff to him, or to one of my girlfriends or whatever. And so if we can do those things, why can't we intentionally do those things in our relationships? Again, it's the everyday things. Like, yeah, like you said, like at the gas station the other day, this man tried to holler at me. As soon as it happened, he was the first person I told. One, because he's my best friend, and it just comes naturally. Like, but even in those hard moments, like they say, pick and choose your battles. Yes, every situation doesn't have to be a battle. So yes, you pick and choose your battle, but that doesn't mean that you
can't voice.
Yeah, you can't voice something that's bothering you, even if you feel like it's minuscule. Because again, the more you keep brushing under the rug, that rug will keep building, and you're gonna trip over that shit, break something.
Yeah, because not everything that you bring to that person or your person has to be an issue. And some people can feel like, oh, well, every time I bring something up, it's an issue. Well, check yourself with it first. How are you bringing it up? Are you like, hey, like, this happened, I wasn't really feeling it, I'm just letting you know? Or are you like, you did this, this, and this, and I was like, da, 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 da. Like, how are you talking to the person? When are you saying these things? Are you saying it in an argument, or are you bringing it in like just a regular conversation to where they're level-headed, they're clear-headed, and it's not going to piss them off because they're already pissed off?
And then on the receiving end, I want to say, are you intentionally and active listening to what your partner is telling you? Two, are you self reflecting? Because sometimes I feel like we just don't want to hear shit because it really is holding a mirror to our face. And then we just pop off, you know, and then we never focus on the main issue that our partner was trying to bring to the table. Um, and I also feel like that might be a reason why some people be like, every time you're always bringing something or you're always trying to start something.
Yeah.
No, I think the way that you're perceiving it, do you have a problem with yourself? How do you perceive yourself? Do you actually perceive yourself the way that your partner perceives you? Because I feel like some of us, like maybe we really just don't think the greatest of ourselves, and that comes to the outside, and then we're trying to build these strong relationships, but we really don't even feel like we deserve the relationship that we're in, and then we end up self-sabotaging when our partner is just trying to get out the kinks and the screws in the relationship, but then we run from it, thinking that you're just trying to start a problem, or you're trying to
you're nagging me, or
yeah,
whatever the case. And I think a lot of dudes do that too. Like, they'll withhold they'll with, they'll withhold how they're feeling because they don't want to hurt the girl's feelings, or they don't want to start something, or whatever the case. But it's like that that can build resentment because you're like, I can't tell you nothing because every time I tell you something, you feel like this and da da da. And like you said, it's both ways. The dude, like, no, you really do gotta communicate, or else you're gonna be like, I'm tired of this shit. Or and for the female, you really just gotta hear him out without, you know, getting upset or, you know, feeling attacked, because that's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it so you can understand where that person's coming from, and you can see the changes that may need to be made, or and you can even explain why you do certain things, because even that understanding is probably the biggest thing with humans. When you can understand where someone else is coming from, it makes it so much easier to get along with that person. Like, not, you don't have to agree, but you understand.
I'll
Um,
also take gender out of it because I know a lot of people in relationships that the male is the one they can't go to.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you know, for that reason, and their partner shuts down. And then they keep just brushing stuff under the rug, because
yeah,
they just don't want to start an argument or whatever the case may be. If you have found yourself in that cycle, one, make sure you're not dealing with someone who has narcissistic tendencies. Um, that's just one, and that's not everybody. That's kind of an extreme. Some people really just, one, they just don't know how to communicate. They didn't have those examples.
mm,
Um, Two, they still don't have those examples. So like the people around them, their closest people, they don't know how to communicate. They're not holding them accountable. They're not calling them out on their bullshit. They're not doing these things. And then if you are the one person who's trying to do it, you seem like the enemy. Um, I'm just saying, like,
no, that's serious. It's just funny because my head.
yeah,
Uh, I automatically went to, yeah, like if you're dealing with someone who always like flips it on you, or gaslights you, or you know, any of those things, then you kind of got to look at it differently. Like, because again, like, the relationships that we are talking about, and the relationships that we are pouring into, those relationships are two-way streets. If you feel like you on a one way and the other person coming to you and y'all about to crash, that's other things got to happen in that. And we're not the people to tell you what to do with that, but we're just gonna say that, you know, you got to be going in the same direction. It might not be the same pace, but at least the same direction. Um,
so if you are in a relationship, whether you're on the end where you're the person that's open to communicating, or you're on the other end where you're kind of like, I think I have a problem with communication. Nah, I'm kind of standoffish. Um, you can still grow from that. We all got to
mm-hmm.
start somewhere. But if you're dedicated to growing with your partner and being honest, like maybe after this video, have a conversation and be honest. Like, again, there's two extremes, right? But we can fall somewhere in the middle. So like have a conversation and be like, you know what, I think that, like, dang, like I think I have a problem with you bringing things up, and like go and just talk about it, like go deep. Like, I have a problem with you bringing things up because I have a problem with myself. Like, I've had people talk. I'm just giving an example. Like, like open up
Yeah.
and see where both of y'all are starting from, and then walk.
And then if you feel like it's getting to the point to where y'all start arguing and it's not a discussion anymore, stop.
We've learned that in our 5th year marriage. When it
Yeah.
gets to the point like you really arguing, like, you can gotta raise your voice a little bit and kind of, whatever, But once you start like, hey,
Just stop.
stop,
Just stop.
like literally just stop.
Because that wasn't the point of this.
Mm-hmm.
The point of this was to talk and to, you know, get an understanding of each other and be like, okay, well, I don't. The reason why every time you bring something to me, I just, just okay, is because I don't like arguing, or I don't like doing this because I'm just not that person. Whatever the case is. Once it gets to, like, you start blaming or you start pointing the finger and you start getting loud, stop. and be
The
like,
intention needs to be love. The intention is to never hurt your partner. So once you feel like you're about to say something to hurt them, like
mm-hmm,
intentionally hurt them, like I've said things that have hurt him, but it's not intentionally.
mm-hmm,
But once you feel like you're about to intentionally hurt your partner, cut it.
yeah,
I will also say though, so in our 5th year of marriage, we started doing an extreme. I call it an extreme because I know y'all gonna be like, how the hell do y'all do that? Like how? Um, we started like once we get to that point to where obviously we're not able to solve this, we literally stop and we pray.
yeah.
And it's not no heavenly father,
It's
it's
conversation.
it's a real conversation. And in that we call ourselves out. Like in the one example, we were in Cancun celebrating our 5th anniversary of marriage, and we got into this real big argument. Y'all, we walked back to our room, hand in hand, sat on the bed, closed our eyes, held hands. Okay. Physical touch is so important. It's really hard to be mad at somebody when you're touching them. Got on the bed, we held hands, and we instantly prayed. So I don't remember who started, but in his prayer, he apologized for anything that he might have said that may have hurt me. Um, he, whatever, yada yada. And same thing on my end. And y'all, for me, let me just be real. To hear the person that I was just arguing with call himself out and say like I know I shouldn't have said this, or I know that I was wrong in this area. Do you know what that does? Like on some real shit, like to hear that one is softened my heart because I'm like, damn, like you can humble yourself. And even if you couldn't say it to me right in the moment of our argument, you're pouring your heart out to our creator. Bump me. You're pouring your heart out to our creator on the most realest shit, and you apologized and you identified an area where you felt like you were wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Reflection is so key when it comes to arguments.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can point the finger at yourself before pointing at somebody else, then you're not gonna want to point at somebody else because you're like, dang, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have did that. I could see why she got upset about that because I said some foul stuff. Like,
Cause you know what the fuck you doing.
yeah,
Like
like,
you know what the fuck
and
you doing.
especially for people with tempers, because
Yes.
I'm gonna be real, I got a temper, and when I get to that point to where like I don't care what flies out my mouth, I can say some real hurtful stuff, or I can like, you know, and um, to be able to check myself in that and apologize for the things that I know I did is beneficial for both of us because I can be like, all right, I know when I get to hear me saying anything like that is it's not gonna work for us. It's only gonna take this argument further down the rabbit hole. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to resolve everything, and we're trying to get it back to where we're supposed to be.
So here's what I'm gonna say. Cause again, stopping in the middle of a heated argument and praying is an extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Took some time to get there. Um, but here's what I'll say. Okay. Hang with me for a little bit. The next time you and your partner have an argument and you get to the point of talking about it, if you don't talk about it, talk about it. Like let's stop doing the whole let's just go to the next day and act like nothing happened. Let's stop doing that. Literally just talk
Or
about
just
it.
go straight to sex,
Yeah,
cause that
let's stop doing that.
that
Makeup
ain't
sex is
going.
great, but makeup sex ain't gonna heal the shit that y'all just arguing about.
Makeup
It's
sex
really
will be
not.
like the icing on top of
Yeah,
fixing
like the
everything.
reconnecting. That's what
Yeah.
it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be the literal physical spiritual reconnection to
Mm-hmm.
reconnect y'all. Um, so when you get to the point of having a conversation, call yourself out on an area where you need to do better. So if you yelled at your partner, call yourself out on that. But then give yourself kudos for one thing that you did better than the last time y'all had an argument. So say if you walked out and you that your partner hates that, then call yourself out on that. But if you normally yell and you didn't yell, you kept your calm, give yourself kudos. And again, say that out loud to each other as you're talking and have your partner do the same thing. You're not going to get it perfect, but each time you can get out a screw, just take out one screw each time, you know? And then give yourself kudos. Like you have to learn how to celebrate your small moments too, just like he was saying. We give our kids we be giving them celebrations for the littlest things.
Yeah.
We need to keep that same formula for ourselves in every aspect of our lives, especially our relationships and for self.
Yeah, and another thing we did, and I couldn't stand it, but it made me stop. She would hug me, like in the middle of it, and it would piss me off. But I couldn't be mad because like she's just sitting there hugging me, and I was like, it would calm me down. But I would be hot, and then she would just come and hug me, and I'm like, get off me, get off me. But then like what are you supposed to do when someone's hugging you? Like you calm down. Try that too. Whether you the dude or the female or whoever, y'all are arguing and you're at the point where like you don't really want to argue anymore. Like you're calm, but the other person isn't. Hug them. Physical touch is healing without it being sexual. Like
Mm-hmm.
hug them and like talk to them. Like
Or let me give another example. Say if like y'all get into an argument and y'all need some space, and it's been maybe like an hour has passed. It's a long time, but people be doing days, okay?
mm-hmm.
But maybe an hour has passed, like, and you see your partner is kind of still in his or her own world, but you feel like you're kind of over it. Go and like rub his or her head or brace her shoulder and begin that that reconnection, and then open the space to say like, are you ready to talk about it? I'm kind of ready, and if they say no, then let it be. Just stay around them, give them that, allow them to know, because sometimes, like for myself, actually I can say for both of us, because Trey used to run from arguments or conflict. He didn't like it. But I feel like we do that because we feel like if we get to this point, like you're probably gonna leave, or if you're gonna leave anyway, or all this type of bullshit that we tell
Mm-hmm.
ourselves in our head because of our past traumas. Um, like, dang, I lost my train of thought. Oh, that's what I mean. Like, stay connected to your partner, because that may be where they're stemming from, which is why they separate themselves. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, like I'm used to people leaving me anyway.
Yeah, there and because there's people, and we're those people.
Mm-hmm.
When we get into our head and we start analyzing everything that was said or done, we're just like, okay, so you did this and you did this and like, or whatever the case, and like old us would have been like, all right, so it's about that time to move on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the next move? But that's not that's not how it should be. The reassurance, like, hey, I'm still here. I'm ready to work it out. That person will be like, oh dang, like I ain't used to that. Like
Mm-hmm.
something I learned was that the point of arguments, all arguments really are a misunderstanding. And if it's not a misunderstanding, it's getting to understand and learning one another, parts you like, parts you don't like, and how to communicate that with each other. That's all arguments are. And you have to turn arguments into discussions. So it just becomes simpler after that because you're no longer going at each other. You're like just talking with each other.
My I like talking metaphors. If you don't follow me on Instagram,
She's a
then you don't know
preacher.
me about you don't know that about me. How I like to view it, it's like a rose. Okay, so like roses are so pretty, the red part, but
She
some
gonna
of
talk
them
about
have
the thorns.
thorns, right? So imagine you're rubbing your hand on a rose, and you come across a thorn. That to me is what arguments are. The rose is like your journey, right? Your relationship journey. And in that journey, you will come across thorns, but they're not supposed to have you break the stem or crumble the whole flower. They're just they're just supposed to wake you up to say this is time for an area of growth. Um, Maybe there's something within you personally that is now conflicting with where you guys are going, and it needs to be fixed. Um, or it's just there's something in your relationship that was in the foundation that no longer needs to be within the foundation. You no longer need it, and it now needs to be built on something stronger for wherever you're headed. Um, and like he said, every argument doesn't need to be an argument. Every thorn doesn't need to be an argument. It can be a discussion. Um, that's kind of how I view arguments.
Look at you. I was, as you were saying, I was thinking like it's also like say you're taking like a long road trip with your car. You, the longer the road trip, the more parts you need to change. So if you got a bad alternator, you got to change the alternator before you go out on the day road trip.
Mm-hmm.
You got a bad timing belt, you need to change that belt. And each thing has a different severity. And so
let's take it one step further. You're in this car with your partner around this long road trip. Aside from having to make sure that the car is up to par for the longevity of the road trip, right? So interchanging parts and making sure that there's gas and stuff. Y'all are probably going to switch who's driving
mm-hmm.
from time to time, which means sometimes your partner may drive faster than you're ready for, than you're prepared for. Sometimes you may have to go to the restroom, so then you have to stop for a little bit. What if your partner don't want to stop? You know, what if your partner gets hungry? Take a little break again. Um, that's kind of the longevity of a relationship slash marriage, a long term relationship slash marriage. And I always say long term relationship because not everybody wants to go down the legal route to say that they're married.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no judgment in that. There's no shade in that. You don't want the government in business. You don't want the government in your business. Ain't no shade in that.
As long
But
as you have
marriage is a
them,
mindset.
yeah,
So
you stole my
that's why I
words.
say long term.
I was
That's why
about
I
to say
say long term relationship because marriage is a mindset. Whether there's some legally married people that aren't mentally married.
I'm gonna
So
trademark that.
as you should.
Yeah, exactly. Like the if you are in your relationship for the long haul, for the lifetime, that that is the goal till death do you part, or as my wife say, and we gonna be in heaven together too.
We sure are.
Then you have to be ready and willing to fight through everything that comes y'all's way. Now, again, we always say you both have to fight. If one person fighting the other one ain't, then that's a different story.
Fighting that thing, not each other.
Yeah. Yes.
The world.
The
Fight the
world.
world together.
Yeah. Everything starts with each other. So those arguments, those discussions, if you can handle that within each other, y'all can handle anything that comes out to y'all. Because one thing that we learned is that like our biggest arguments, our biggest things have never been because of what one each other did. It was because of outside things happening to us. And once we know we're good, we can handle those things, and it's so much easier. So, yeah, just keep working with each other, man. Don't give up on each other because you think an argument is bad, or you think that someone will never change. If they show that slight change of anything, then it can work, and that's changing for the better, obviously. But yeah,
we went up, down, around the corner, backside, front, back, and then park. We're gonna park it right here.
Hopefully this help somebody.
Yeah. I pray it does. And if you sit on a high horse talking about me and my partner never argue, that's great. You still living.
Yeah, be ready for
it. I always say, everything is seasonal. So, in each season you learn things. So if you're in a place where you feel like, dang, like we're always arguing right now, like, learn what you need to learn in this season and apply it in the next season of bliss and abundance and joy. Because you'll need it there too. But yeah, so
and don't look at your season compared to somebody else's season. I'll say that too, because people have compared our up season, our spring, summers, to their winters, and like, oh, what they got is fake or whatever. And it's like, nah, we've been through our stuff. Right now, we're good. Now there might be a time where it comes back, and now we're back in the winter or whatever you want to call it, like the down season. But we know how to navigate through that, and we can get through it. So that is the same thing. When y'all are down, just navigate through it, get through it. So when y'all are up, it's like it just feels more refreshing, you know.
Last thing before we close this out, because he's talking about comparison. Here I go with the metaphor again. So like
Preach, preacher.
in every relationship, you have different benchmarks. Um, don't be over there looking at the other couple and how fast that they get through their tests or whatever the case may be, or how great they pass their stuff, because you don't know what the heck is on their benchmark. Y'all probably taking
Mm-hmm.
two completely different benchmarks. Um, but I know it's so easy to do that. Let's not even throw social media, because it wasn't social media that did that. Comparison has been around
Mm-hmm.
forever. Um, just focus on where you are in your journey. You know, you can be inspired by people, the good and the bad, where what you do want to be like, what you don't want to be like. Um, but
But just let it be
don't
that.
don't attribute that to yourself. Don't
Yeah.
judge yourself or judge your relationship because of where someone else is
Mm-hmm.
in their season. It don't matter the time either. You know, you may look at someone who just got with their partner and they're great at communication. They have that right off the bat. That's great. That's something that they have. You know, that's something in their foundation that maybe just came easy. But there's other areas that maybe they struggle that maybe you're stronger
Mm-hmm.
in. So just you know, focus on where you are and where y'all are in your place, and focus on that and ground yourself in that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this was not the answer to old girl's question. We're gonna have that next week
Mm-hmm. We're gonna talk about that.
because it was really good, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a really good one. I'm excited to re-record that. I pray that whatever comes out our mouth is what's supposed to come out. I pray that whatever came out our mouth tonight was supposed to come out, and I pray that it is received and utilized, and that someone else's relationship is blessed because of it.
Yeah. We really got real about some marriage today.
Yeah, this
That
this is
was
what it is, y'all.
yeah.
This is the raw, real.
Real rap raw. This
This
is
is what
what
it
it is.
is.
Let's
Let's
get
get real
real
about
about
marriage.
marriage.